I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I'm an executive job search and leadership coach, the head coach for JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. That light bothers me. Let me just turn that off so it doesn't bother you too. Let's see. There we go. I'm sorry. My apologies there. I worked in recruiting for more than 40 years, filled more than 1,200 full-time positions plus consulting assignments. One thing I learned a long time ago is that the skills needed to find a job are different, yet complement the ones needed to do a job. And what I'm trying to do now on Sunday mornings is take a little bit of time in answering questions. Now, my channel on YouTube, which you can get to easily at jobsearchtv.com, was recently named a top 10 job search channel on YouTube. And my podcast, No BS Job Search Advice, was also named a top 10 podcast. It's been on air now since 2011, more than 1,300 episodes, number one in iTunes in that category. And I hope to be able to help you with either. Subscribe to my channel on YouTube, subscribe to my podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Both are very, very helpful. But on Sunday mornings, I decided I would do a Q&A show where people can either leave questions for me or message me through LinkedIn in advance and come back and get their answers. So if you want to message me in the future, do so at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. And I'll get to answering your questions on Sunday. I'm not going to do it right then and there. Once a week on Sundays. If you want something faster, contact me through either prestoexperts.com after we're connected or through an app called Magnify, MAGNIFI. In both cases, schedule time with me through LinkedIn so that in this way you're not interrupting if I'm coaching someone else. Okay? So let me get to my questions here. So let's see now. Has an interviewer ever misled you about the company you were applying to work at? I worked in recruiting for a long time, and I think one thing I learned about agency owners is they tend to minimize the problems and dramatize the opportunity. You can make a lot of money here. Now, for job hunters, this idea of an interviewer misleading someone, it happens all the time. And I'll just simply give you the example of, I've never heard of an employer ever saying to a job hunter, we've got a lot of problems around here. My predecessor got fired. Her predecessor was fired. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that I've inherited a bunch of problems and my butt is on the line. I'm interviewing someone to save it. Instead, they all put on these happy smile button faces. If there's a problem, they minimize it. They dramatize the opportunity. They make this seem like it's such a great place to work, but never tell you about the last 3 people who sat at that same desk and why they left. So I've always said this. How can you tell an applicant is lying to you? Their lips are moving. How can you tell an employer is lying to you? Their lips are moving. And how can you tell a recruiter is lying to you? Their lips are moving. Everyone is posturing for advantage. Of course, they can be misleading. The idea is to test it in the course of the interview by talking with the people that are not your future boss, the people on staff who are there evaluating you and asking them questions about what it's like to work there. Why do you stay here? How long have you been here? If it's 2 months, the answer is conditional. But, when push comes to shove, you've got to ask questions of the people there in order to get a better feel. And you can also go on LinkedIn and find your predecessor in the role. It will help you a lot. Okay. Next question. When is a good time to reach out to a potential employer on LinkedIn? Like time of day? You can't be asking me about the right time of day. Excuse me, I've got an injury on my middle finger there. You can't be asking me about the time of day. If you are, how am I supposed to know the schedule of the person you're trying to contact? LinkedIn has a delay send or delay delivery, I should say, on anything that you're sending to someone. So it's not instantaneous unless we're talking about the messaging service. Messaging is pretty much instantaneous. However, I'll also say that what you need to do is if you're applying for a position, it doesn't matter the time of day because you can't guarantee that you're interrupting someone. I wouldn't send it at Sunday at noon. Skip the weekend unless you're talking about Sunday night, because then otherwise it gets buried in the inbox for a while. But in terms of messaging someone, there's no way of knowing whether or not your message is going to get through, because even at times where I'm on Messenger all day long, and people are messaging me, I can't always respond because I'm coaching someone. I'm doing something else. I'm critiquing someone's resume. I'm prepping them for an interview. How you can't tell just because I keep that one tab open that I'm available to chat. So no way to answer the question. Sorry. Let me go to the next one. Oh, good. Someone messaged me. Which is worse? Giving up or keep trying and get blocked from your goal and never reach it? I'm going to take the second part of this, getting blocked from your goal and never reaching it. The question is, why are you being blocked? Often people are blocked from their goals because they haven't earned it or they don't know what's necessary. Sometimes there is a legitimate block, but most of the time, the lack of opportunity stems from the lack of experience, the lack of leadership. There's a lack in the individual, and the message is very clear. You don't deserve this role. Their job is not to promote you because you want to be promoted. Their job is to fill a position with someone who deserves to get promoted. The question is, why are you blocked from your goal? Giving up? No. That one is worse because you're not even trying. You've surrendered. The lack of knowledge of something is easily remedied. If they don't trust you yet, you can develop the trust in them that they can trust you in the new role. But giving up, that one is clearly worse. Thank you. So thanks for asking that question. Let's move on, okay? If you walked into a walk-in interview and forgot to carry your resume, okay, so you've got an in-person interview and forgot to carry your resume, what would you say that would still land you the job? Okay. So you believe that the absence of the resume is going to cost you the opportunity. Trust me, that's not the issue. It's not going to make them happy, but you have to kind of dive in and remedy the situation by talking about how your background fits what it is that they're looking for. If this is one of those dog and pony show things where they're interviewing 50 people on a given day, you've forgotten your resume. It wasn't smart because on their side, they're moving quickly, but you need to know what it is that they're looking for and then back it up. You have to back up how your background fits what they need. Easiest way to do that is really very simple. You're there for a reason. You saw that they were looking for people with backgrounds like yours. And you have to just simply say, hi, my name is. I apologize. I forgot my resume. I can message it to you a little bit later on. I've been working for so-and-so where I've done this and that. And as I understand, you're looking for someone who has a background with this and that. I've done it for about 4 years now. I, again, apologize for not bringing the resume. I hope you can see your way clear to continue the interview with me. What you've done is give them the reason to continue the conversation and not throw you out on your butt. That's the way you started off, is to try and avoid getting thrown out of the freaking interview because you made a mistake. And that's the easiest way to do it. Okay? Do recruiters actually check a LinkedIn profile if they already have your resume? The answer is yes. Now, not always. but most of the time. And the reason, I'll speak for myself as a former recruiter, the reason I would do it is sometimes there was an incongruence between what was on the resume and what was on the LinkedIn profile. I was checking the profile to see whether or not what was on the resume might be truthful. And sometimes what you'd find out is on the resume, they've emphasized one thing. On the LinkedIn profile, they emphasize something different. And now it's my job to investigate because I want to really know the truth. Because if what they've done is just blow up what they think I want to hear or the experience I want to hear, and it's not emphasized in the LinkedIn profile, well, the LinkedIn profile is likely to be most accurate because that was the generic reflection of their experience. Does that make sense to you? It reflected what their real experience was. So once I'm interviewing them, I'm going to test it galore and try and put pressure on them, even going so far as to say, your resume says you're strong in this, but your LinkedIn profile, it's almost invisible there. Could you explain that to me and why you think you're actually qualified to do this role, given that you didn't think enough of your experience with it to really dramatize it or emphasize it in your LinkedIn profile? Notice what I did? I'm just putting it out to explain, but I'm doing it in a hard way to let them know the jig is up. I want to know the truth. So, yes, they would look at the LinkedIn profile to see congruence, to see whether or not the person is being truthful with the resume. And if there's a possibility that they aren't, to test it. By the way, one of the funniest things is when people drop off jobs on their LinkedIn profile but keep them in the resume or vice versa. Bizarre, but it happens all the time. Okay, we got another question. What are great resume templates? None. There are no great resume templates. I don't believe templates are ideal. Part of the reason is that they can mess up the import to an applicant tracking system. Now, I'm working with the assumption that if someone's asking me about a resume template, they're relatively inexperienced. And you probably are, right? Let me just see. No response yet. Okay. So I'll just simply say that resume templates should be considered a guide for what the resume should look like. Never use a template because the frames that exist in the template sometimes can interfere with the ATS. And you're not going to follow my advice about never applying to a job through an applicant tracking system, right? So what are great resume templates? Follow the format of the template, but not that. Okay, Maurice, what is the most amount of time you should give a contract agency to respond after submission for a contract position? I would put in a phone call to them. And the phone call would basically say something along the lines of, I submitted my resume for this role, haven't heard anything from you. Is this a dead issue now, or should I move on to someone or something else? Now, moving on to something else can be someone else is able to get you in the door there, and this one contract agency can't. So I would put in a quick phone call or an email. It could be 2 days later because, it might start off with, actually, let me back up for a second. You've submitted your resume. A day later, you just want to simply say, forwarded my resume to you for the contract assignment. Haven't heard anything from you. Is it still open? They'll respond in some way. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I've been busy. Blah, 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 blah. And we know time is of the essence there. I would start immediately trying to find someone else to submit you, because if they're not so interested as to be rushing to get you in the door, to me, the next day would be the right amount of time, especially if they haven't contacted you. If they have contacted you, you feel obligated to follow up with them. Have you submitted it to the client? No. Yes. Okay. Yes. What's happened? Tell me what's going on from your vantage point. Oh, we haven't heard anything back. Okay. Any reason to believe that you're not going to hear something back? You kind of go through the Q&A to get clarity. But once it's been submitted, you're locked out. You can't have it submitted from someone else. And if they say, no, we chose not to submit it, go to any other agency to have you submitted for the role. It'll just save you a lot of time and angst. But you always want to be in the position where you're not losing the one contracting firm, because you never know where you're going to run into them again. Next question. Is it true that recruiters reject a resume in 6 seconds? Less. It can be less. Lord knows. I had it down to 3-4 seconds a lot of the time. So yes, it happens. And the reason is it's not obvious that you fit. And their job is not to sit there and study your resume like it's the Bible. Your job is to make it clear how you fit the requirement that you're applying for. So get in there and start talking to people. Make the fit obvious that your background fits, and do it in the first third of the resume. The first screenshot. Make it obvious there. Put it in the message area if you're submitting a resume by email, or add the equivalent of the message or the cover letter as page 1 of your resume, and use keywords in there to make the fit obvious. Always use their language where you can, because what that does is, if you're submitting it through an applicant tracking system, as I suspect you are, the system will pick up on the identical language and how long you've worked with it and pass you through. So good question, but again, the answer is very funny to me. Next one. Can my employer, this one isn't really about job search, it's about an internal transfer. Can my employer refuse to tell me my new rate of pay before I accept a new position within the company? Well, the truth of the matter is, yes, they can. They're stupid if they do, but they may say to you, well, we're going to pay you the same thing in the new role, right? Why they're not telling you that, defies logic, but most of the time firms will try and do a transfer and try and keep you in the same pay grade. Now, if it's a legitimate promotion, help me understand, you're promoting me now and I'm not being paid anything more, or you're not telling me what more you're going to be paying me, even though my responsibilities have grown. Why am I supposed to accept this? And you shut up. You listen. You don't get into this big dramatic argument. I've done this in 2 sentences. Now, they may say to you, we want you to prove yourself. So for how long? Becomes the follow-up question. Well, until we're ready to decide. Too ambiguous. They may decide somewhere around when kingdom comes. So you always want certainty, because after all, your boss may go and change jobs or move into another group, and all bets and all promises are off. So you always want certainty. Can you put that in writing to me? No. See, people sometimes change jobs, even people at your level. People sometimes get fired, even at your level. I'm SOAL, shit out of luck. If you move on to something else, and I'm left here in this job with no confirmation of the promise. So why don't you at least send me an email that says, what the plan is, knowing that it may not be, kept, but at least you have something in writing where you can challenge them, and go to HR and say, hey, look, Dominic has left, and I'm doing this job, and he gave me the idea that I'm doing this position at a higher level. I get more money at a later date. So HR said, "Oh, we didn't know anything about that." Okay, he didn't know anything about it, but he did. He was my boss. He told me this was the case. So just get out there and start talking to them, and make them commit to something prior to you agreeing. If you don't trust your boss, there's a bigger problem. There's a bigger problem. You hear me? So get in there and try and negotiate, because you want to know. And I'm telling you, they're probably not going to tell you, because they're going to try and get you for cheap. Okay. Another question from someone. Jeff, I had an interview last week and they mentioned salary, which caught me off guard, and I really didn't know what to say because I hadn't ever been asked during an interview. Okay. Anyway, I gave them between new numbers, and he said at least at the end, I just remembered I even said that I didn't think to say negotiable. Do you think that small mistake may have cost me the job? They did say during the interview prior to this, I have no idea what this is, but I get the idea that this person thinks that when they asked the question, were asked a question about salary during the interview, they didn't handle as well as they might. They gave a salary range, I'm going to pick numbers here, between 100 and 120. And they forgot to say negotiable. So, no, that's not the biggest variable here. The biggest variable is how you performed answering their questions on the interview. So I'll simply say that when you're interviewing and you get asked a question that's a little bit, that confuses you a little bit or catches you off guard, just pause for a second and go, and then think of your answer and go into it. So here you might have said 100 to 120, and I'm more interested in an opportunity than getting the most amount of money. If you decide if I decide this is the right organization for me, and you decide I'm the right person for you, I want to encourage you to make your strongest offer, or you try and remember the word negotiable. Personally, to me, it's a throwaway word because they know it's negotiable. Most of you don't have negotiation skills, and they're going to try and bully you into accepting something else because that's what big companies do, right? They try and bully the people they interview to get them for the cheap. Lastly, this is a fun one. Let me just get back to it. Should I accept all the recruiter requests I receive? Let me ask you a question. What are you worried about? What are you afraid of? That they're going to have access to your network? Well, LinkedIn allows you to set up privacy settings or set up your privacy setting in a way that they can't see your network, can't see the people who are there. They may be able to in-mail them, but most recruiters these days have what's called the LinkedIn recruiter account, where what they're doing is buying access to the more than 500 million members of LinkedIn. And what they're trying to do is to learn about you. Your network really is irrelevant to them. So think of it from your standpoint. They're recruiters. Their network is big. Your network on your side, by comparison, is small. You want access to their network because they're out there trying to connect with people, generally people with your kind of background, at least for this search. Why not expand to your network? Now, if this person looks like they're 20 years old, based in another country, does all their other work there, and has about 2 months of experience, no, you don't need to do that. They may not have been given access to LinkedIn Recruiter by their organization, so they're just trying to reach out to folks. But from your vantage point, if it's an experienced person, year or two of background at a minimum, or more, why not? What's the problem from your standpoint? So I'm Jeff Altman. I hope you found this helpful. If you're interested in my coaching you, reach out to me through LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. Mention that you saw this because I just like knowing I'm helping some folks. Once we're connected, we'll set up a time for a free discovery call. We'll figure out if it's worth our working together. Again, if you have more questions, come back next week or message me through LinkedIn at, again, linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. And send me your questions. If there's no big rush, I'll simply say, go back, You'll have the answer the following weekend. If there is a rush, contact me through prestoexperts.com at Magnify, Magnifi. Hope you have a great day. Take care.